I didn't think I needed another master limiter. And you're probably thinking the same thing, but I want you guys to give this a chance. Boost from UrsaDSP. It's pretty unique. Boost is the first plugin from UrsaDSP, which is sold through the Devious Machines shop. It's created by Dave Elton, who is a viewer of mine. He sent me a message, wanted me to check out his plugin, played around with it a little bit this morning, and quite enjoyed it. So let's take a look. So we've got the standard presets menu up at the top with A/B comparison, input control on the left, and a drive. There's also a punch control, which turns the drive control into an emphasis. We've got a focus slider and the overall kind of compression amount or amount of boost in here. We've got a maximum amount of gain, so we can crank this up, but limit it to only 3 dB gain added, which is pretty neat. Nice to have that kind of, we've got a look ahead or attack control. This is interesting. This really changes the sound. The latency is not actually that bad on this. So latency on the 40 millisecond setting is 1900 samples. That's not really that bad for a master limiter at all. But it goes down to 2 milliseconds or 97 samples of latency. And there's some really helpful tooltips at the bottom which tell you how the look ahead or attack control actually will affect the sound. So, for example, at 2 milliseconds, sounds under 500 hertz may be subject to coloring, and that's pretty cool. And so at 40 milliseconds, highest fidelity mode, ideal for master bus use with moderate latency. On the right, we've got our output, where we can set our kind of brick wall ceiling, got a bypass control, and then a release control. And this, again, has a very big impact on the sound. It's kind of all the same settings and functions that you would kind of expect to see in a brick wall limiter. But I feel like this one just feels different, especially with the focus control. This plugin behaves a lot differently than other limiters. The plugin's also fully resizable up to this kind of massive fill your screen amount. Really nice. So I've got this on the master bus, and let's hear this. Bypassed. So to me, that's not really adding any distortion, any sort of saturation that you might kind of expect from a brick wall limiter where it just muddies everything up, sounds nasty. So that's on the highest look ahead amount or the slowest attack. Let's put that on the fastest and compare. I find that things sound a little bit more punchy with the 2 millisecond look ahead, but you can definitely hear the low end changes. And I think 10 milliseconds is my favorite. He even calls it the balanced latency mode. So sounds under 100 hertz may be subject to coloring. Let's start with the input control. There's some interesting things that happen. The input signal or the input slider is brought up. It starts to turn down. In this case, my tracks are kind of lower RMS and it's not turning things down. And in the graph here, you can see that mostly it's adding gain. And there you're seeing that it's applying downward compression. So mostly this is applying upward compression. And so you can get some really interesting effects by turning this up to some amount. Now I'm going to adjust the release control. And I'm just trying to show you the different things. This is obviously not the best setting for the master bus, even with this mix. I just want to show you how there's so much variety in the sounds that you can get by the amount of boost, the amount of input signal, and the amount of release. All right, so I've reset back to default and I've set my output to minus 1.5. Let's now look at the drive and the punch controls. So the drive and the punch control has a really big impact on the sound, especially the punch control, which adds in more attack to any transient signals. I'm going to switch over to putting boost on one of these synth tracks. And here is where things get really interesting, in my opinion. This synth line has a few high notes and then low notes, and there's these delay tails in between. And with the focus control in this, we can totally change the amount of that reverb tail. I think it's really interesting how you can boost the input by 28 dB and it doesn't really sound that distorted. Like it would be complete mush with most Brickwell limiters. It almost becomes more of a tone control or a character control. It's pretty interesting. I really like what it does with the reverb tails. I think you can get some really interesting movement if you find that sweet spot where it's going between upward and downward compression, and you adjust the focus control to bring in the detail in the tails. So I think it's pretty interesting. There will be links in the description to where you can get this. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Support the Reaper blog through Patreon, and visit reaperblog.net for a lot more tutorials.